No, those things have been pre-sold for months. That's done.
All right, so everything we say now is going to be recorded on the Facebooks and the YouTubes. And if you say anything about the election, we will not have a show on YouTube.
You're talking about the Georgia special election, right?
Or Facebook.
Yeah, any of them, man.
We'll keep politics out of it completely. I'll refrain from swearing at all. We'll do all that good stuff.
Swearing's fine.
Yeah.
This is not a PG show.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a few F-bombs on this show. Yeah.
Most of them from Alex.
Yeah.
Probably. I'll try to keep it clean today, though. And you're talking about Alex Vetter, right? He's the F-bomb dropper.
Yeah, when he's come on, he like let loose. So
Truth.
Darren too a couple times, just couldn't keep his cool with it.
Darren for sure. Well,
are your main offices open? I'm assuming they're closed, aren't they?
Yeah, we're still closed.
They just
my
both Chicago for us, the Naperville for DI, all still closed. I think beginning of next year they're going to let us do like the hotel desk situation, right, where you kind of reserve and they keep it to a certain number of people, but that's still getting finalized.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think worse than swearing would be to mention a competitor's name. And there happens to be one.
We'll name drop a few of them, probably. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, there happens to be one of yours in Burlington, Vermont. And they are not opening that office back up until July.
Yeah, my wife works for Ford. And I think it's same time before they're opening up the main offices.
Yeah, my father-in-law works for GM,
Michigan.
and he's still work from home, and he moved like 45 minutes further out into the Detroit suburbs. So, like, I think he might just retire once the work from home stuff's done, or else he's doing like 90-minute commutes now that he downsized and he's out in the woods. So,
well, we're going live in 3 seconds, folks. All right, here we
like
are.
The effect. Wow.
Yeah, it's fancy time, Jake.
The jet taking off. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it sounds like.
And by the way, Kevin says you're more than welcome to swear. He can deal with it.
Kevin's effectively my dotted line boss. So if he approves, we're good.
Good. All right. Well, let him drop. In fact, I'll apologize in advance to the guests. I had to turn up my gain because Grant says I'm a little quiet, but maybe that's a good thing. So today we have Cars.com with us, and Amy and Jacob. Jacob's been around for a while. Amy's new to DealerRefresh.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you because we've had a sneak peek at the research you've done, and the show or the slideshow that you're going to show us today is pretty strong. There's some really compelling information in there. Look forward.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah, slide number 13 is my favorite.
They're going to put everyone in suspense now.
It's not an unlucky one this time around. It's good stuff. So
slide number 13 will blow your mind.
Well, why don't we?
But stay for slide 14 and beyond. Like it doesn't end there. Like
Amy, what's your back? Amy, what's your background?
We need to know more about the keeper of slide 13.
Absolutely. So I'm the research director at Cars.com, and we spend a lot of time focusing on the visitors that are coming to our site, understanding the car shopping journey, what their pain points are, what their needs are, what they're looking for, and how we can translate that into better interactions with dealers.
And I've gotten the pleasure of working with Amy for what? I'd say like 6 or 7 years now, right?
I'm sorry it feels that long. It's about 4.5.
4.5. Well, you tapped in 6 fingers value in 4.5. So also time doesn't work this year, so all my estimates are off. But no, I've gotten to work with Amy for a long time at Cars. It's been great. And when she gets these nuggets of research, particularly stuff that's actionable, right? Like where we're seeing COVID trending, what the impacts are. We want to make sure we get that in front of dealers to do stuff with it, which is why we're so excited you guys had it on. Get this in front of a big audience and talk through everything that's going on, both for now and 2021.
Yeah, especially since you've already given up on 20. No more time tracking for you, right?
If you can do something in the next 2 weeks with this research, go for it. Yes.
Well, should we keep everyone in suspense or see how fast we can get to slide 13?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I think we can jump in. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
So when did you guys, I guess you decided to start tracking all these trends and all that good stuff as soon as COVID went down? Were you looking at new items once it started, or is it the same stuff you've been looking at for a long time?
I mean,
So
I'll
there's
let Amy
definitely
color it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's definitely some areas that we really focused on once the pandemic hit. We've been asking about digital retailing just from an overall perspective for a while, but once COVID hit, we really dug into the specific areas of digital retailing to understand what consumers are most interested in doing online versus what they still want to go to the dealership to do.
Makes sense.
And yeah, we when this all kicked off, we kind of had some war room type analytics and research going on, right? We're talking March, April. I think you guys remember the Dealer Inspire blog launch that was basically given weekly updates on some of both the website and marketplace level trends. And Amy's team's done a good job of just continuing to do these check-ins throughout 2020 with the consumers to see what ebbs and flows. I think everybody experienced sort of that big kind of, zoom down, zoom up from a tractor perspective, from a demand perspective. But there's been some interesting things just as COVID has continued to impact everything we're doing here that has come through very interestingly in the data as to how things are trending. So it's been interesting to watch and kind of base some strategic decisions off of what are we seeing here? What do we need to be consulting dealers on? Because it really has changed a lot of consumer behavior as they go through that buying funnel.
Yeah, it's nice that you guys stuck with it, because there's been, I was watching quite a few other vendors or services out there, and I think after about September, I guess maybe they just got tired of tracking everything, so they just didn't keep it updated.
Yeah, I think though it's also transitioned in, we were releasing like these COVID decks, but then when it comes to digital retailing, it's no longer necessarily about this is what to do during COVID. It's now become more business as usual. This is just how business is going to be. So, I think we've had to kind of shift the mentality of, COVID impact to business as usual.
The new norm.
Exactly. Once shoppers do something for 9 months, that is baked in. That is the expectation. That is what's going forward. So it's been interesting to see kind of how that has started to stick.
For sure.
I don't want you to have to jump around. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that.
All right. Everybody can see my screen okay?
Looks
great.
good.
Looks amazing.
All right, good. All right, let's dig in. Okay, so we've talked about this a lot, and we're all well aware of the profound impact that COVID has had on not only automotive production, but sales, and even the way people are shopping for vehicles. So today I'm going to spend some time taking us through some of the research that we've compiled. And we're going to talk about these changes and how some of these ways of interacting and doing business are here to stay. First, some kind of not so great news. So looking at industry sales, historically, Q4 is one of the stronger quarters in terms of vehicle sales, but 2020 is looking a lot different. we're projecting sales for the year to be down at least 15% from last year. And we haven't seen that since the recession of 2008. We've got actuals here through September, so we'll see how October, November, and December play out. But it's looking to finish out at around 15% below last year. But this definitely isn't about a lack of consumer demand. We know that inventory shortages are the main culprit here. The US automotive industry had its longest disruption in vehicle production since World War II, when every major manufacturer ceased operations for 8 weeks this past spring. And this production shutdown put automakers 3 million vehicles behind. And so now, with auto inventories low, car prices are going up. The projected average transaction price in the third quarter was over $39,000, and that's up $2,000 from last year.
Hey,
And it
Amy,
is crazy to think just the once in a lifetime type nature of that impact, right? Biggest since World War II. I remember I was in a meeting room back in like February or March before we all did start working from home. And we were talking about something, and somebody busts in the room and basically says there is footage on the news of satellite imagery from China of these plants just being shut down. Everything is stopped. And you could see like 6 months earlier, these plants just full and all the cars that were coming off the line, and then basically just a hard shutdown. And I think that's when it hit. Like, man, this is going to be such an interesting supply challenge this year, just because it's such a strange nature of like pulling that lever on the hard stop, and we're still seeing that like late in the year. It's really come to fruition here. And I know, Jeff, you're probably seeing this firsthand at your store, what these challenges have meant for you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Inventory, you know, at least with our new car inventory.
quick question.
Yeah.
Does anyone
Slim
know
pickings.
when the last time we had a jump of $2,000 per vehicle on average sale in a year? Has that ever happened?
I don't think I've seen it, Amy. I don't know if anything's come from yours. I don't think we saw that in 08 and 09, right? Like, we didn't see that level of jump. I could be wrong, but I don't remember seeing this in my time in the industry.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, this also resulted in higher margins for dealers during the summer as well. But yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a jump in vehicle prices like this in quite some time. If ever. I mean, I'll have to, go back into the archives and see, but it's a big jump.
Well, I tell you, that's due to, especially in the beginning, dealerships not selling as many cars. That's been sort of the saving grace.
Right, for sure. All right, so just to reinforce the consumer demand here, Cars.com visits to the site have been up from last year every month, with the exception of April, and our in-market audience, so those that are looking to buy a car in the next 6 months, is at its highest levels. It's up 4% over last year. In fact, 28% of Cars.com visitors said that they plan to buy a new or used car over Black Friday weekend alone. So we're definitely not seeing any kind of decline in demand.
Did you see was there maybe a change in the device that people were using? Typically, I mean, we got a lot of mobile. I'm sure you get most of your visits are mobile anymore. But did you see maybe a jump back up in desktop during those 2 months?
That's
What's interesting
Oh,
is, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
No, Jake, I'll let you take that away.
Yeah, so it is interesting, right, Jeff? Because like I know this is a weird analogy to throw out there, but like the whole thing that I've had fun watching this year is the whole Quibi fiasco, right? There was this $1 billion project to put a ton of content on phones because Hollywood thought that everybody was just going to be out and about watching 10-minute shows on their phone, and then everybody's been home all year watching it on the big screen, like, and that's what doomed that business. That hasn't been the same, right? Like, our current mobile share is still 75%. So I think there's some different behaviors going on in the market when you look at how people consume media, for instance, and the multi-screen share that they're going through there versus shopping behavior. We're still seeing a very high mobile, close to record high mobile levels on Cars.com. So that is one impact that hasn't necessarily gone over and shifted people back to desktop. That traffic level is still, you're looking at about 3 out of 4 visits occurring on a mobile device.
What about your apps?
Apps have remained strong. I think it's been very steady. We have one of the strongest performing apps in the industry for marketplaces, and the traffic has stayed very steady there. And the share, obviously, you're going to get a lot more return visits there, right? That's going to be the heart of your return visit because people have made that jump in. But the app engagement's been high. So I think what's interesting is you see these overall trends in the traffic, right? Like we experienced that big dip in April when there was a lot of demand sucked out of the market. That demand flew back in May, peaked in July. I think a lot of folks saw those jumps in July. Cars.com, we were in a great position when you look at ComScore data from April to June. We were the fastest growing in the US, which was exciting. I think everybody saw some sort of recovery there from the marketplaces jump back up. But with those kind of moving lines, it was interesting, I think, that when you look at desktop, mobile, app share, stayed pretty consistent, with maybe some percentage points continuing to tick towards the mobile side.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I was always curious about your apps. I know last time, I think it was maybe time before last time, we were diving into some pretty deep stats around the Cars.com app. I've always been a fan of it.
Yeah. I know the last, I'll have to check our stats, but the last time I was digging into the data, we had the highest monthly average users. So, people who are downloading the app, it's definitely more sticky. We see, as Jake mentioned, our repeat visitors, highest return rates on the app.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's debatable.
So continuing on, since the COVID outbreak, stated usage of public transportation and ride-sharing services are down 43%. And public transportation businesses in some metro areas have reported as high as 90% lower ridership due to the pandemic. I don't think that there's any big shocks here, but this is driving a new segment of potential car buyers. So from a study that we conducted back in March, we found that 17% of non-car owners were now considering buying a car since the outbreak of COVID. So we're seeing a lot of people who, previously would not have owned a car, but because of, reduction in public transportation and ride-sharing services are now wanting to buy a car.
Do you know which cities have had the biggest hit on ride sharing and transportation services?
So San Francisco, New York were the two that were mentioned. I would think that Chicago as well. Chicago's such a commuter city.
There's some really interesting, I'll need to dig it up. There was some really interesting research that Apple released just because, they have all this map data that basically allows them to see a lot of the activity that's going on public transit, right? When you're moving in that manner. And I know, as Amy called out, particularly for San Francisco, New York, and Chicago too, it was a bottom out. It was crazy what happened to those means of transportation. And they've ticked back up a bit, but they're nowhere near the levels they were beginning of this year.
Yeah, I think something like 33% of workers are still working from home. So that's obviously having a big impact on public transportation for metro areas. What's interesting as well, though, is that this is creating an urgency to buy. So based on our data that we run on our site, the percent of consumers looking to buy in the next month increased 21% from March to July, and it's currently up 16% from March. So we saw this, rapid shift to, urgency to buy in the next month.
And we talked about this a bit at the top, right? How there was like all this research that came out in April and May about what's happening in real time. And, particularly since September, it's slowed down. And this is why we've kind of kept a commitment here to watch this, because it's interesting to see this, right? Like not everybody was like, oh, I need to go get a car right now back in April. But you guys know there's the life events that trigger and get you into the shopping process, kids getting married, any other life changes that might bring about a need for a vehicle. And what we're seeing on the consumer journey side, because we've asked about intent to buy and time frame to buy, for years and years and years. We have long-standing data trending back on this. Like the fact that we're now seeing close to 50% looking to buy in the next month. I mean, this is an aggressive timeline. We're seeing a lot of people enter the market with intent to move quickly, which I think is very interesting when we look at what the consumer behavior impacts have been.
Well, they always say a lot of times when a consumer purchases a new house, usually a new car follows up, and we've got all these people moving out of the cities into the burbs, so that might be a sort of a trigger for everyone to have more of an urgency.
I think you're dead on, Jeff. I mean, I can speak personally here. I'm moving out of my condo right now, and I'm speeding up this process because COVID has made me sick of the couple hundred square feet I've frequented for 6 months. But we're also have a kid on the way, and we thought maybe we could do this for a little while, but we sped up that process, and that new house is probably going to lead to a new car. Like, it's just a huge factor for every family in when they trigger these life events, and it's speeding it up. I think in a lot of cases, not in all cases. We'll look at some research here. There are some that this has led to some paralysis by analysis, but we're still seeing probably the delta there. And Amy, I think we've got this on another slide, is COVID as a factor for 1 in 5 shoppers. They are stating, yes, that is speeding me up. I am moving faster because of COVID.
Right.
Do we see a minivan in your future?
We, if my wife wins the argument with me, yes, we do see a minivan in our future.
Can we answer 3 questions from the audience real quick?
Sure.
Let's dive in.
So the first one's from Ed Brooks, and I believe this is regards to a few slides back, where he's asking, is the 15% sales decrease spread evenly across new and used vehicles?
So this is actually just new sales. I do have some stats on used sales later in the deck that I'll talk about, but I will say that used sales aren't hurting as much as new.
Okay.
Ed's one of those guys who's got that intuition of where we're going next, so he's preempting the stat, which I love.
Yeah, and used sales are a little bit, there's a much bigger lag with the reporting on used car sales because you have to wait for registrations and things like that. There's private party, there's indie and franchise sales as well. But I did look at those numbers, the numbers that I have up through September, I believe, up through and compared that to 2019, and I will touch on that later in the deck.
Great.
And then I think the other question you were probably alluding to was about sample size and methodology. Amy, I'll let you hit on sample size if we have that directionally right here. But this has been a standard research protocol for us with Cars.com consumers. This is once we have kind of an understanding of a consumer being on Cars.com, we reach out to them, look to better understand their shopping behavior, survey them. This has always been sort of a standard practice of ours. Amy, do you have something directionally in terms of what that sample size usually looks like?
Sure. So there's a few different sources of research in here on the one-off studies. So if I were to say, the stated usage being 43% down, a sample size this is a one-off study, and sample size is around 1,000. With these studies, this is an ongoing study that we have always on our site. We collect 1,000 responses a month. So if you're looking at a quarter's worth of data, you're looking at about 3,000 responses. So so typically our studies are 1,000 respondents per study.
And I will add, for a lot of folks, like a lot of that public transit, since that's kind of the one-time single sample size, like I said, there's research from Apple. There is a ton of stuff out there. And even, the eye test I get every day driving by the train, like the public transit has really taken a large hit during this time.
Absolutely. So then this would be another one-off study that we had done during the pandemic. We found that vehicle ownership had actually taken on some new meanings during COVID. People looked to their cars as a source of escape during the pandemic. So according to a study that we conducted back in April, 55% said that they used their vehicle as an escape from their home, 45% started taking Sunday drives, and even 9% stated using their vehicle as a makeshift office. So people are getting creative in how they're using their car. I think, we definitely saw that a lot more at the onset of the pandemic versus, things are kind of winding down with winter time. But this also translates into, over the summer as COVID was raging on, road tripping and recreation were growing. People weren't flying, people are hitting the road. More than 1 in 10 Americans have gone camping for the first time in 2020, and 1 in 5 visited a national park for the first time. RV rentals increased 650% this year, according to CNET's Roadshow, and RV shipments are projected to increase 20% in 2021. This could also result in an increase in truck sales for non-motorized RVs, the fifth wheel type. So, we could see an uptick in truck sales from this huge growth in RV sales.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know quite a few people have went out and purchased an RV.
Oh, I was all about it, but my husband and I have had that like kind of in our retirement plan, and he's like, no, that's retirement. That's not now. So we bought a house instead. But I was all about like, let's ditch the house and do the RV thing.
Does cars.com, can you list RVs?
No.
Not right now. We don't allow for that. Something we've talked about a couple times though.
Yeah, you missed that one.
This is where though you can trust the research, because we're showing stuff that you're not going to just invest with us directly to do. We just want people to know.
Any chance you saw maybe a spike in vehicle accessory sales, especially as more people are using the car as a sort of a getaway or even their office?
That's interesting. I haven't looked into that, but there's a huge backlog even on parts as well. Obviously with production shut down, that affected parts as well. I'm not sure how much that translated into the accessories, but my car got rear-ended at the end of October, and it is still in the shop. So we're going on over a month and a half now. So there's a huge delay on getting parts. But I'll have to look into how that's translated from an accessory standpoint.
Yeah, Jeff and Alex, you might know this. It's been a little bit since I've seen a number, but last I saw was average aftermarket on a pickup truck was running about 1,700. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I think there's something there, right? If we're, I'm thinking about summer 2021 already and getting away, but still there's factors with this, and the RV life appeals to me. Like, I think what Amy's saying here, like if these pickup truck sales continue, if this continues to be a factor, yeah, there's a lot of aftermarket potential there, a lot of things that could potentially be positioned with those options. So it's interesting.
I'll tell you, I've always been a more of a sports sedan hatchback guy, and for the first time in my life, my next car will be a truck.
Nice.
I'm curious how many new truck buyers are out there this year or maybe even commercial truck buyers, so your Super Duty truck buyer, that kind of thing, who are not using it for work purposes at all. It's just for towing this new boat or RV or whatever you're doing to nest at home harder.
An additional vehicle purchase, not replacing something.
Yeah.
Well, back in like the May-June timeframe, the pickup truck segment was actually not hurting at all. It was doing quite well. The incentives offered were really helping boost sales. So the pickup truck segment was least affected by COVID compared to other vehicle segments.
I know a number of people who bought F-450s. I'm jealous. But yeah,
that's a workhorse.
For sure. So as we talked about this, COVID has definitely been a change accelerator for the industry. With new cars in short supply, used car sales have outpaced 2019 sales since June. So from June through September, used car sales are outpacing 2019 sales. And we all know that online sales took off. Consumers have long complained that car dealerships were way behind other retailers in terms of doing business online. But obviously, coronavirus and social distancing measures have definitely lit a fire under those efforts at dealerships. And what's really important is that dealerships' ability to pivot quickly with the implementation of digital retailing options and some of the OEM incentives that were offered back in May, June, even into July, definitely contributed to an uptick in summer sales. And we're going to see more on this.
Yeah, and one quick note on that, Amy, because I know for frequent refresh viewers, right? Like Darren Hagen was on back in the summer, and he was talking a little bit about this. DI saw requests for demos of digital retailing solutions jump up about 250%, 65% with chat. Alex, I'm sure your phone's been ringing a lot with people asking questions about your stuff. There was such a quick implementation and adoption of a lot of this stuff in the wake of this. And it's interesting what that now, the long tail impact, which we'll go into in a moment, what that's done, because now there's been enough time for consumers and dealers to engage directly off that, and not to spoil the data coming up, but there's been some impacts there.
Yeah, you teed that up nicely, Jake. All right, so this is based on a study that we had done back in the July timeframe. So the vast majority of dealers are now offering digital retailing options in some capacity. And when we asked dealers about this back in July, dealers said that they were most likely to be ramping up or now considering local home delivery of vehicles and online financing or purchasing of vehicles. And according to a dealership in my neck of the woods, Dan Fields, who's the president of Fields Automotive Group, said, "We've had to change the way we do business a lot. For instance, doing a completely contact-free deal where somebody never leaves their house. We bring them the car, they test drive the car at home." And so as these types of services become more and more common, it's going to be an expectation from consumers. I mean, once you've had a taste of it, you're not going to turn back. And we'll see more about that. But, like personally, I don't know how I ever lived without heated seats or without heads-up display. So, this is just going to, like I stated in the beginning, become business as usual.
Mm-hmm. What was the average number before for online financing? Or is that just online, that's financing and purchase? So that's more of a digital retail percentage there.
Right. And this is from the dealer perspective, asking dealers like what they're ramping up or what they're now considering. And actually so online chat and online financing were the ones that dealers were most likely to already have in place. So obviously, like the local home delivery is something that was new and not typically previously offered.
Gotcha.
And what's the sentiment on local home delivery now?
So let's talk about that. So from the consumer side of things,
we were right on slide 13, by the way. This is
the consumer side of things. It's really great to see that the areas that dealers are focusing on, the online financing and the home delivery, is exactly where consumer interest is highest. So we've been tracking this since March, and we've seen a lot of fluctuations over the past 9 months, with interest really peaking in April. But it's important to note that 2/3 of shoppers want to do at least some part of the car buying process. Mainly, our interest is highest, rather, in online paperwork and financing, and then that home delivery piece of it. And then 1/3 want to do the entire process online. I mean, there's still about 1/3 that say, I still prefer to go to the dealership in person. And that's definitely higher among used car shoppers compared to new car shoppers. And I mean, that kind of makes sense. Used car shoppers really want to, kick the tires. They want to make sure that the vehicle is up to their standards. With a new car, you obviously don't have to worry about as many things. But to get a real understanding.
Yeah, well, each of these moves a little differently. You'll see pretty consistent trend of like where we were at the beginning, maybe a little ramp down in some of the summer months where things were looking a little better. Big ramp back up recently. Again, each line works a little differently, but I think to Amy's point, we're looking at kind of a situation of thirds, right? Third want to do it pretty much fully online. Middle third want to mix and match those elements. Other third really still value that kind of going end to end at the dealership. But it's interesting because now that's the size portion for your experiences. You can't really be in a position where you fully ignore one of those consumer segments because they're all at a very big size. They're all not a majority, but a very sizable amount that you need to cater that experience across different elements to. So it's been interesting to watch these trends and where different people put the priorities among the experience of what's done in the store, what's done online.
And what about, like, I got two things around this. One, it'd be interesting to see this regionalized. So the Northeast, for example, has had some of the tightest COVID restrictions, along with California, and it'd be interesting to see how the South might feel in comparison. And then
Yeah, I was looking at this on a state level when there were shelter-in-place orders, and for sure the South was more interested in going to the dealership in person. I haven't looked at it on a state level in a couple of months since the shelter-in-place orders were lifted, but the South was the first to really increase in that. You see that increase in 41% in August saying, none, I still prefer to go to the dealership in person. That was primarily driven by the South.
I also wonder if it's brand weighted as well. I could see where maybe, not to stereotype too much, but the Buick shoppers might be less inclined to go visit the dealership in person versus a brand that might pull in a younger demographic.
Toyota, Honda, yeah.
For sure. And when you look at it by age, younger generations are more willing to do all of this online versus, the older generation who's preferring to go to the dealership in person. I mean, my 90-year-old grandmother, I cannot for the life of me get her to buy groceries online. She's just like, I need to go to the store. I need to pick them out. I'm like, you can have them delivered to your house. You shouldn't be outside.
That's her getaway.
Well, and that's the other part. So people get sick of being at home. And, I went down in August to New Jersey and stayed in a hotel, and all the other people in the hotel were people who lived down the street from the hotel, just trying to get away from their house because they were sick of looking at it. So it's like, if I'm tired of being at home, then hell yeah, let me spend 6 hours in a car dealership buying a car.
And that is exactly what we saw from like July to August. It was such a big shift, and it was really interesting. That's what made me kind of dig into the results more regionalized, because people were just sick of being at home. And buying a car can be, for some people there's definitely some pain points, but for most people there's a lot of joy. I mean, there's that satisfaction of like having the new car. I mean, people aspire to get a new car, so there's the test driving part that people love to do, and people want to do that at the dealership. They want to be comparing makes and models at the dealership.
There are so many interesting cuts you could make to this data. Like, I mean, Alex, you brought up the difference by makes. I think if you are getting into, like, if you're just replacing a car, same make model, or if you're exploring around, more undecided, there might be differences. As a Chicago guy, I'll pull in weather too. I am much more interested in having a car show up to my driveway in the dead of winter. And now that I know that I don't need to go to the store in the dead of winter, I'm going to do that. And I think kind of my point there is there's all these X factors, and I think every store needs to look at it a little differently. But when you kind of roll it all up to the average, like what's the weather, what's that shopper looking for, all that stuff, you're going to arrive back at this like kind of big picture number, which is third wanting to do it all online, third wanting to do it mixed, third wanting to do it in store. Like, every segment is going to have different shifts as far as how many of them are over here, how many of them are over there. But I think the long-term picture is that story of thirds.
Yeah, and just to kind of drive that point home, I mean, if you want to get a real understanding of the desire to buy cars online, you can look at Carvana's financial results. So according to their Q3 financials, they had a 39% increase in units sold year over year at a time when vehicle sales are down and prices are increasing. So there's definitely a demand to be doing this online.
Yeah.
Ooh, and speaking of that, so this I'm really excited about because this just came out yesterday, and this is from JD Power's 2020 Sales Satisfaction Index study, and it really kind of ties together all the points that I'm trying to make in this presentation. So I want to focus on three key takeaways from this. The study found that as dealers implemented and refined digital procedures at the onset of the pandemic, buyer satisfaction among digital customers increased. So most notably, customers who were able to finalize the price online, their satisfaction was nearly identical to those who didn't finalize the price online before the pandemic began. But by the May-June timeframe, as dealers had implemented more virtual options, satisfaction among buyers who agreed to a price online was 42 points higher. It's on a 1,000-point scale, but this demonstrates how quickly dealers were able to implement and refine these processes that were resonating with buyers. And our research has shown us that the number one pain point in buying from a dealer, from consumers, is that they worry about getting a fair price. So giving consumers the ability to negotiate online is clearly alleviating some of that concern.
None of those customers were really getting a fair price those couple months.
Well, their satisfaction is a lot higher.
$2,000 per copy increase.
Just doing the negotiating online is clearly something that's resonating with them.
Yeah.
It's funny how you can land at the same number, but when it happens almost like in a chat environment versus when it happens sitting, in the F&I office, like it's just a different consumer perception. And this has been so interesting to see. Like this is huge for customer retention. This is huge for getting somebody back as a second or third time buyer. Like that is not a small jump in consumer satisfaction. That is big for the dealers who have like put the work into this and done that. Like it is crazy to think that in a year that's so rough, like this process with all the hurdles that COVID has put in the place of buying anything, satisfaction's up. That's a huge accomplishment by dealers.
Yeah, it's definitely major. And, I think that buyers are feeling a little bit more in control when they're able to kind of do it from the comfort of their own home. They don't feel the pressure as much. So it's definitely resulting in higher satisfaction and potentially repeat buyers. So two other points that are just to drive this home. Buyers who completed most of their paperwork online are most satisfied. And, we saw that was the number one area that consumers wanted to do online. So their satisfaction was 35 points higher than those that didn't complete the paperwork online. And satisfaction scores among those who had more virtual communication was 17 points higher than those that didn't. So it's really clear that
what this translates into. And I see this with dealers who are more transparent in their pricing and payments and what they show online, or how they give numbers to customers who have come in as an internet lead, is that people are driving further to do business with that dealership. So there's still a lot of dealerships who are putting the numbers way deep into a digital retailing process, or not doing it at all.
Yeah. And this year is interesting because you have to factor in the inventory shortage as well. So people are for sure going to drive further if you have the exact car they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what also struck me as like impressive with the satisfaction jump is factors outside of our control have limited how many options you can even give to that customer if they've got specific parameters they're looking for. And yet that satisfaction is still up, knowing they have to pay a little more, knowing that there's less selection. These tools are kind of bridging that gap and netting out positive, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about service and repair. So the pandemic has created kind of another opportunity in automotive. A recent study that was conducted by McKinsey estimates that 1 in 5 car owners are postponing their maintenance, and an additional 29% are actually planning to do more maintenance on their cars. And so with consumers holding on to their vehicles for longer amounts of time, there's an opportunity to maximize margins with service and repair centers. And if you couple this with contactless offerings such as vehicle pickup and delivery, there's a ton of need in the marketplace and potential opportunity to recoup lost margins with service and repair.
And Alex, you rightfully gave me crap at the top of this when I skipped right to 2021. This is something I think that there's stuff you can do with this before the end of the year, right? Got a lot of people with pent-up vacation. They're going to be staying at home for 2 straight weeks. We have seen on our end with Fuel, our in-market video product, creative that highlights service offerings performing really well, actually driving increased ROs, foot traffic. And I think for anybody out there who's running campaigns across any media, like you've got some service hours, you've got folks that are at home more of the next couple of days. And if you're communicating maybe a pickup drop off or service, just stressing the safety of the service department or letting them know that this thing they put off for a long time can be done effectively and safely, you might see a jump in your inbound service calls and your ROs. Like, I think there's a really interesting angle here for stuff you can market with a quick turnaround on creative between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, just pick the customer's car up and they will do that service.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people don't know that. So many people assume they just have to come. And simply getting that message out there, knowing that more people are sitting on these overdue maintenance things is huge.
Here's another crazy thing. They'll pay more. You're giving them such a convenience that they will pay for that convenience.
One of the most popular memes out there right now is you order $15 of food and your final bill comes out to $50 because there's delivery surcharge, all these things, right? Like, there has never been a more educated consumer base on the cost of convenience than right now. And they will pay for it. They will.
It's true.
That's so true. All right, so let's wrap this all up. While the pandemic has forced many dealerships to quickly implement new ways of doing business, the point that I've been trying to drive in here is that consumer expectations are only going to increase in the post-COVID era. And as vehicle inventories start to rebound next year, dealerships need to be prepared for a lot of pent-up demand, and they need to be equipped to service consumers in their preferred formats. Because the bottom line is, if your dealership isn't offering the ability to transact online, they're just going to move on to one of the 80% and growing that do offer digital retailing. And last point, don't just take my word for it. This came from the JD Power study that was released yesterday. So Chris Sutton, who's VP of Automotive Retail at JD Power, said, the more shoppers are exposed to remote communication and actual online buying options, the more they may prefer these methods in the future over traditional showroom visits to wade through inventory and negotiate. I mean, we clearly saw that in the results of the study. In fact, nearly 1 in 4 buyers say that their purchase experience during the pandemic will make them less likely to shop in person in the future. So 1 in 4 are saying, now that I've done this online, I'm not going back. So that clearly is indicating that digital retailing processes are here to stay. And the lasting effects make it imperative for dealers to set up their digital offerings to remain competitive.
And I do want to clarify, because I did see Drew throw some in the chat. So
yeah.
I think this is
we're
pretty...
saving all of Drew's comments for when the slideshow is over, so we can get into the skepticism.
But this was a really awesome thing for us, because this is really fresh research. Like, as Amy alluded to, this came out yesterday. This is about as fresh as we could have gotten. So I don't know if there was like a number that flashed randomly, but this is Q4 2020. This is about as fresh as research gets. And I think plug for the Refresh forums, we've got this coming over, and we're going to have links to this stuff going up on Refresh. So anybody who wants to dig in a little further can have an opportunity to do so.
Cool.
I found it interesting to see, and that was back on slide 13. I guess you don't need to bring it back up, Alex. I see you closed out. But
slide of the day, slide 13.
With all these, with all with all the increase in what's communicated with the dealership, I'm surprised to see chat still lingering down there in the teens. Any thoughts around that?
It's interesting. I mean, in March it was 22%. We're currently seeing it like around 15%. Do you have any like usage stats, Jake, about chat on the site, how well it's performing?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with chat has been, and this is a tough one to talk about, but I'll throw it out there, some hard staffing decisions at dealerships that had to be made April, May, right? And the amount of time and energy people have been able to put into chat, and managed chat's great. There's some really great managed chat agents out there. We do very well with the conversation side, but sometimes it's just about that availability of the chat button and how often it's manned and how often it's live on site. So we are seeing some increases in chat. I think not to the degree that Jeff, you're alluding to, like, shouldn't a pandemic push that forward? I think there's a lot of opportunity in the space for the dealers who get out there, but it's still a little bit of a chicken and egg. And I'm not going to say like shame on people for not doing it, because I've talked with a lot of dealers who have told me straight up, like, I want to do this right, and I need to get my staffing back to the levels I'm comfortable with to do it right. So I don't think that's the full case there, but that's something that I have had one-on-one conversations with quite a few folks on that I know has been a challenge in the chat area this year.
Yeah, chat's been out for a long time now, so I also have to wonder if enough consumers have sort of been through that process once and found it to be such a disappointment that sort of has a reflection on their current answer to that question.
We asked this question. This question is prior. This was before the pandemic had hit, but we asked about preferred method of communicating with dealers. 41% said email, 29% said phone call, text message was 23%, chat was only at 5%. So in terms of like the preferred format, it's definitely like email and text message far before chat. I would think that number has shifted a bit now, but it's still much lower than email.
And Jeff, I think you hit on something with the experience there. We have to redefine what people feel in chat, because it can't just be just typing back and forth asking for information. I'm really excited that just a couple weeks ago we added the functionality to cars.com VDPs, where now if you're leveraging conversations, you can solicit that video chat. So you can start right there. You can do the video walk around. I think there is huge potential in chat when you've got the agents to do those video walkarounds. There's some really great content on the Dealer Inspire blog that showcases a lot of examples of this. That is where you make the chat so valuable for the consumer. But you're right, Jeff. A lot of people have had subpar chat experiences in the past, and
it turns into most of the time it's, especially in the past, it's a lead conversion tool and nothing more.
Right.
And I think enough consumers have sort of come to that realization that they maybe shy away from it now. But you touched on the video piece, and I really thought that we would have seen a climb in chat services, but mostly within the chat using video. I just thought we would have seen a spike in that. But there's really not a lot of options out there on the service side for dealerships to utilize yet. So maybe the technology just isn't quite available yet. Even though there's,
I think we'll get there. But yeah, I think we've still got a little ways to go.
Can I make a duh statement? And it's done.
Make your duh statement, man.
It needs to be said, and it needs to be repeated. And Jeff and I have been on doing the bringing new technologies to dealerships since the early 2000s, and the same rule is the same today, and that is whatever new thing you do, whether it is digital retailing, at-home deliveries, or chat, whatever it is, if it's not incorporated into your process, then it's not going to work for you very well. So you can manage service these things and get some, some results. But again, like if you're doing, if you're advertising at-home deliveries, but your people really aren't excited about it, they're going to talk customers out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And chat is another one that, and chat might be a little special because it gets screwed by the CRMs, big time. So the CRMs don't really have good ways to show that transcript and to, highlight the most prominent parts of the chat that are most relevant to the salesperson. So, as long as it's buried in some, extra ADF, you've got to go open up and hunt through a transcript of, and some of these transcripts get pretty deep.
Are they that bad?
They're just going to pay it. They're going to ignore it. What's that, Jeff?
We all need to lobby together to get everything to move over to star format versus ADF. Because Alex, I hate that with chat. You're right. It's so discounted and then buried into a notes field that nobody ever looks at. It's terrible.
Same with trade-in forms. Like anything that, it's only the first lead that actually gets appended into the CRM well. Everything after that is ancillary and usually marked as a bad lead or a duplicate. Some systems, if they're set up right, like eLead, which Jeff, I know you use.
Well, I've used eLead for so many years, but chats that come across at least the initial first in lead, if it's chat, it's separated out with the bubbles and everything.
Yeah, the first lead is always the one that gets the right.
But I think if it's a dupe, then it just puts everything together.
Yeah, but God forbid.
But that goes back to your point, Alex. Because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, God forbid you get a cars.com lead on a used car you've got in inventory, and then somebody goes to your website and fills in your trade-in form. That trade-in is not getting appended to the customer record.
But I mean, that ties so well back to your point, Alex, which is that it's about the process, right? The way you're going in and reviewing the CRM data, that's part of your process. You can make chat not work for you, 100%. You can have it be a bad experience all around. It can also be amazing. It can do things that with video walkarounds and the right engagement can win you deals you would have never other done. It's a tool. When you have a tool, it's about how you use it. So I agree with you 100% on all those points.
Yep. And I might be a little less. So Jeff, I think you've probably got things set up at your store. Maybe a trade-in lead that comes in second or third might append.
When you say append, the lead actually. Well, whenever you say append, you mean just the source or an actual copy of that particular lead?
So you've got a customer record, you've got a first name and last name, contact information, you've got a vehicle of interest, and you have a vehicle of ownership. And that's typical of most CRM systems. If the first lead comes in with just a vehicle of interest, then that's all you get. If another lead comes in with a vehicle of ownership.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yep. No, you got to dig through the lead to find out what information there is.
Yeah. And it looks like Drew's leaving, so we don't have to dive into all of his skepticism.
Thanks, Drew.
But those were some good.
I did want him to hear about Refresh, though. I'm sad he left.
Oh yeah.
Refuel. You are Refresh. I'm here to talk about Refuel.
You're supposed to talk about that in the beginning. We slid by it.
Yep.
We got all hyped up about slide 13, and then we just took off. But yeah. Thank you guys for having us on to talk about the research today. But did want to give a big warm invite to all of the Refresh crew to attend our Refuel segment next week. And just a couple minutes on this for people who aren't familiar. Refuel is the brainchild of Joe Churro over at Dealer Inspire, who I think a lot of this audience knows. And he started at DI with this thought in mind that, like, we all have these ins and outs of our jobs every day that dominate our mindset. Like, we are thinking about this stuff 365. If you're on this call, you're thinking about this stuff 365. I will be opening presents on Christmas morning and be like, man, this would be a good thing to do before NADA. It just happens. And we sometimes don't spend enough time getting away from the noise and just focusing on self-improvement, really turning inward, forget everything about automotive remarketing for like a day and just focus on you. And I think what's really cool is this is something Joe put on it for his team for years. When DI entered the Cars family, it's now available to all cars. We've been able to take advantage of it. And this year, this has historically been something we do in Naperville. We invite the entire Naperville community to come out. But because of the pandemic, we're turning lemons into lemonade, and we're making this a global event. It's going to be cast live, and it's free for anyone to attend. So just the quick lineup of what you're going to see, because you're not going to see me going through research. That's not what this is. You're going to see Tony Hawk. You're going to see Myrna Valero, who's an ultra marathon runner and blogger. Jesse Eitzler, for anyone who's seen his videos on YouTube, incredible motivator speaker in Q. And honestly, one I'm super excited about is this woman, Jane McGonigal. She is a video game designer, and she has this whole talk about how, like, when you're playing a video game, it's so fun and addicting because you basically are the hero of the story. Everybody in the story around you is set up to help you succeed, help you meet your tasks. And you know what you need to do. You basically click pause, and there's a menu button of like, this is what's important to win this video game. And sometimes our life doesn't feel like that. We don't have that clear prioritization, that clear support net. And she talks about what she's learned as a video game designer to pull that into her own life and design her own life in that way. And I just think it's a mind-blowing concept that's super cool. So I just want to state emphatically that this is an awesome opportunity. I have felt really inspired by attending in the past. And whether you have 3 hours to attend the whole thing or you've got 30 minutes to hop on for like a quick segment, I like highly recommend everybody check this out. It's next Wednesday, Dealer Inspire /Refuel, free tickets, no catch. We just want to give a day back and inspire folks. So definitely check it out.
Dude, that's awesome. Free. Jeez.
And something positive on 2020. Jeez.
Yeah, we're gonna end on a positive note here.
Well, I'm definitely going to be there. And we're signing up for that.
Awesome.
And we've got ads over on DealerRefresh as well. So, they didn't catch the URL. You guys got a set of ads over there. We got something in the forums around
read
it.
Read the DealerRefresh forums, and you're gonna see a picture of it. So again, Dealer Inspire /Refuel, but also just go to the Refresh forums. It'll find you.
Yep.
Sounds great.
And in the wise words of Steve Stauning, it is Ad Click Friday, so go click those ads.
We're going to have Steve one next year, early.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of this year, just a little logistics before we go. Christmas and New Year's happens to fall on Friday. So we will be having our final 2020 Refresh Friday next week with Cliff Banks. So we'll shut the show down with news and Nostradamus.
That is a good guy to end the year on. That is a solid what to look forward to ahead. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Also happy to have Cars helping us shut it down too. So
yes.
Thanks
we love
so much
being on
for
here. We love
opportunity.
Cliff. So thank you guys for letting us come share today. This is the best thing of my Friday, just spending some time with you two and Amy. So appreciate it.
Well, we definitely appreciate it as well. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. So
Thanks for having us.
happy holidays, Hanukkahs, Christmases, Kwanzas, and all of the above. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Take care.
Take care, everybody.